Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, February the 3rd. And welcome to our commentary. Well, I have a post over at the American Thinker today talking about the so-called Democrat moderates. And the whole thing happened is because of what's happening in Virginia, where a moderate was elected governor. And this lady ran a whole campaign basically avoiding any positions. She was a moderate, and, just a moderate. Vote for me because I'm a moderate and I'm going to work with both sides and I'm a moderate. Well, it turns out that she's not off to a very moderate start as governor. She's actually turning out to be quite woke in many of the things that she is doing, signing executive orders here and there, and these tax increases that are certainly not going to make life more affordable in Virginia. And I think what we're seeing in Virginia is the same thing that we saw with President Biden. Remember, President Biden, when he ran in 2020, in all the primaries and all of that, he was presented as the moderate. He was going to calm things down. He was going to calm down the Democrats who were, at the time, if you remember, you had Bernie Sanders and Beto O'Rourke and Elizabeth Warren delivering very much of a left-wing message in that primary. And, Joe Biden was presented as the moderates, and he was going to calm down the Democrats and then calm down the country after all of the commotion with President Trump. Well, he did not turn out to be a moderate. He turned out to be actually quite a left-wing president. Doing a lot of things that were so out of character with the man Joe Biden had been in the Senate for so many years. As I write in my post over at the American Thinker, you can see it over at americanthinker.com. It's on the right-hand side. As I write over at American Thinker, I think this is a game that Democrats are playing. They run these candidates pretending or on a message that they are moderate, and that keeps the base happy. And then when they get elected, the left wing comes in and says, okay, here's my invoice. I want this, I want this, I want that. And then they cannot stop. They simply cannot stop it. And I think that's what's happening in Virginia, that all of these people who stayed quiet, all of these groups who stayed quiet during the campaign are now coming into the office and saying, okay, we supported you. We didn't make a lot of noise. But now here's our invoice. We want to get paid for this and this and this and that. And that's why she's not turning out to be a moderate. So I think the message from Virginia and the Democrat Party in general is that there is really no such thing as a moderate in the Democrat Party anymore. They just don't exist. Moderates just don't exist in the party. Now, there are some who are technically moderates. I think Joe Manchin clearly was a more moderate Democrat, but he's not even in the party anymore. In fact, he left the party, became independent because he just couldn't continue in the party. So I think we got to be very wary of future so-called moderates. And I believe they're going to find out the same thing in New Jersey, because these moderates, they represent a party that doesn't really exist. All the energy and power and the money, frankly, in the Democrat Party is on the left. And that's where it is. That's why Senator Schumer is going out of his way to be as far left as he can be, because he knows that that's what he has to do, or otherwise he's going to get a primary the next time around. So beware of the Democrat moderate. That's all I will tell you. Beware of the Democrat moderate, because they really do not exist anymore. There's no such thing as a Democrat moderate anymore in this country, or at least not any running for anything in the near future. Well, I have a post coming out Wednesday morning talking about what just happened in Texas and this state Senate district number 9. You may have heard that a Democrat won that district by about 15 points. It was an extremely low turnout election. Special election type of thing where nobody turns out. But that doesn't excuse the fact that this man should have never won that district. And I think, as I write in my post, I'm actually kind of glad that this happened. And I'll tell you why. because I think it's going to wake up a lot of people. It's going to wake up a lot of Republicans that, hey, we got to get in the game. We got to get in the game and vote, because if we vote, we win. If we stay home because, we don't think special elections matter, then a guy like this is going to win. Now, the good news about this new senator is that he's never really going to get to serve. And what I mean by that is he's not going to get to the Senate until the legislative session is open, which won't be until next year. So he's going to have to go through another election in November and basically run for that seat as the senator-elect. And he's going to lose. And he's going to lose because you're going to have Governor Abbott at the top of the ticket. And I guarantee you that Governor Abbott is going to make sure that a Republican wins that district. The last thing Governor Abbott wants in the next session, sometime in 2027, is to have that district in the hands of a Democrat. So Abbott is going to do whatever he has to do to have a Republican win that district. And I'm pretty sure he'll succeed in that endeavor. But as I write in my post, you cannot take these special elections or elections for granted. Just because that is a red district, that doesn't mean the people who vote red can just assume that they're going to win. Normally they do. I understand that. But you have to get out there and vote. You have to participate, because if you don't, a Democrat is going to win. And what happened in this particular district election is, or off-year election or special election, whatever they want to call it, is that the Democrats basically turned out. They maximized their turnout. They got as many people out there as they could. The Republicans didn't. And that's why the result was the way it was. Now, I expect that this seat in November will return to the GOP by over 10 points. It'll go back to being what it always was, Senate 9, a very conservative district. But again, the lesson, and that's what I point out in my article over at the American Thinker, the lesson is, if you're a Republican, you got to get out and vote. And right now, I think the Republican Party is, maybe especially here in Texas, there's a lot of, we're fighting over who's more MAGA than the other. Well, that's fine. I support President Trump too. But you got to be pragmatic sometimes and realize that you're going to need independents to win elections too. And sometimes the independents are, I think they're coveted more with issues and programs that you have, not simply talking about MAGA or whatever it may be. Again, I support MAGA. I support President Trump. But these Republicans need to wake up and go out and vote. And that we didn't do that last Saturday or whenever it was in Senate District 9. And that's why we lost. So we got to get our act together. We got to get off the ground, wake up and go vote. In Texas, you've got 2 weeks to vote early. So there's really no excuse not to vote here in Texas. Now, in all fairness, I think one of those weeks there was some freezing and some bad weather. And I think maybe some of the voting locations may have actually closed because a lot of them are in schools. So that probably didn't, help. But the Democrats somehow managed to vote, and they did it, and we should be doing it the same way. So as I say in my post, I'm kind of glad that this happened, because it's a very small cost. We've learned a very big lesson, and that is, you got to go vote. Don't assume that just because it's a red district is going to vote Republican. It doesn't always happen that way automatically, as they say. Well, you may remember that during the Grammys, and I didn't watch them, but like everybody else, I see these little clips, these little portions that appear on the internet. There was some young woman who got up and was talking about stolen land. And this is one of the dumbest things that comes out of the mouth of these people. And apparently, some people are calling her out on this, and they're saying, hey, look, you have a big property on stolen land, so why don't you give it back? Take the keys and give it to whoever it was stolen from. And these people need to be challenged that way, because it makes no sense to talk about stolen land. I mean, that is just a bunch of garbage. But they get away with this nonsense, just like they get away with all this stuff about nobody is illegal, no human being is illegal. Well, yes, some are. If you're violating the laws of the United States, you're illegal. Now, I'm not saying you're a bad person, but you are an illegal immigrants. So they try to play word games, these people, and this garbage about stolen land. We've heard that many times, or occupied land. You know what? If you think that this is stolen land, give back your house. Contact the people who used to live here 500 years ago and say, here are the keys to my house. I'm moving on. Here's the keys to my house, because I'm living in this house that technically, I guess, belongs to you. So we should be calling out these people, and I'm glad that many are calling out this young woman who made that remark at the Grammys, or whatever it was. Well, on this day in history, February the 3rd, 1959, this was the famous day that became known as the day the music died. You know, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, the Big Bopper were killed in a plane crash. I think all of you know the story. They were touring. There was a problem with the bus, so they rented a plane, and the plane unfortunately crashed quickly after takeoff. It was a total disaster for these three very promising and wonderful young rockers, especially Buddy Holly, who had already developed quite a following. And you know, I'm a big fan of Buddy Holly. Richie Valens and the Big Bopper, well, they're okay, but Buddy Holly, I've always been a huge fan of his. And when the Beatles and the Rolling Stones came to the United States many years later, they brought with them, and they recorded some Buddy Holly songs in their LPs. You know, the Beatles recorded Words of Love, and the Rolling Stones recorded Not Fade Away. So the Buddy Holly music lives on. One of his greatest songs, True Love Ways, has been recorded by many different country artists and lots of different artists. So I think Buddy Holly was a real genius and one of the great rockers. And he still ranks pretty high when they do these, top rockers list. And he should rank very high. He was an absolute genius. And unfortunately, we lost him when he was barely 22 years old. This day in 1959, the day that the music died. And here's the trivia question. Where did that line come from? The day the music died. Well, that was that song. Remember that song by Don McLean, the American Pie song? That I used to hate that song because it was so saturated. We used to hear that song every 5 minutes. But nevertheless, the whole idea of remembering Buddy Holly, that's a good thing. I'm glad that song at least remembered the great Buddy Holly. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.